Hello there, curious minds, and a very warm welcome to the deep dive.
It's great to be diving in again.
We take the sources that have caught your eye, and while we immerse ourselves, we pull out the really key insights and try to make even complex topics clear and hopefully kind of interesting.
Absolutely. Our aim really is to give you a solid, understandable grasp of the material you've asked us about.
And today we're digging into a pretty foundational document for understanding electricity in Nepal. It's the Electricity Rules, 2050. 1993.
That's right, dated August 17th, 1993. And crucially, these rules operate under the umbrella of the Main Electricity Act 2049.
Okay. So the act is the big picture, and these rules are the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. Think of the act as the what and the why, and these rules as the how. They lay out the practical steps for developing and managing electricity in Nepal.
Gotcha. And why should we, care about rules from 1993?
Well, because they're still the bedrock. They cover everything from tiny local hydro projects right up to the huge transmission lines crisscrossing the country.
And they've been updated too, you said.
Several times, yeah. Which just shows they're a living document, adapting as the energy sector changes.
Yeah.
It tells you they're still incredibly relevant.
Okay, so what kind of things do these rules actually dictate? It sounds pretty broad.
Oh, it is. We're talking licenses, how you get permission to survey, generate power, transmit it, distribute it.
All the stages.
All the stages. Plus, vital safety measures, technical standards like voltage and frequency, the stuff that keeps the lights on reliably. And really importantly, the rights and responsibilities of consumers and suppliers.
Okay, fascinating stuff, a real peek behind the curtain. So where do we start unpacking all this?
Well, Chapter 1 is the logical place. Preliminary matters, they call it.
Sounds straightforward.
It is. It just gives the short title Electricity Rules 2050, 1993, and states they came into force immediately back then, August 93.
No messing around. And definitions too, I bet, that legal groundwork.
Absolutely essential. Like ACT simply means the Electricity Act 2049. They established the Electricity Development Department. That's the key body under the Ministry of Energy.
Okay.
And survey is defined quite broadly. It's not just a quick look. It includes feasibility studies, design work, all that detailed investigation before you commit big resources. You see how important that is.
Totally. Get the foundations right. What about the core activities? Production, transmission.
Yep. Production, transmission, and distribution of electricity covers building, operating, maintaining all that infrastructure. And distribution area is just the specific patch a distribution license covers. Simple enough.
And for us regular folks, terms like wiring, meters.
Covered too. Wiring is the whole system getting power to where it's needed. Unit, that's what you pay for, is defined as a kilowatt hour.
Ah, the kilowatt in the bill.
That's the one. And the energy meter, obviously, is the gadget that measures those units. Then you've got crucial safety terms like earthing connecting to the ground for safety.
Like a safety valve.
Exactly. And plant is basically all the equipment involved in the whole process. These definitions set the stage for everything else.
Okay, foundations laid. Let's move to Chapter 2 then. Provisions relating to the license. This sounds like the real engine room, getting permission to actually do things.
You've got it. This is the rule book for anyone wanting to start an electricity project. Rule 3, for instance, targets smaller hydro projects, 100 to 1,000 kilowatts.
Okay, so what do you need for those smaller ones?
Quite a bit, actually. You apply to the secretary via the Electricity Development Department. You need a project description, a map showing structures, details on the water source and quantity, the planned distribution area, number of consumers.
So even for small projects, it's pretty thorough.
Very. You also have to declare if anyone else is already using that water source. It's all about upfront planning and avoiding conflicts.
Makes sense. Transparency and planning. Then for bigger projects, you need survey licenses first.
That's right. Rules 4, 5, and 6 cover survey licenses for production, transmission, and distribution, respectively. Each needs specific info, and importantly, get this, applications have to be in triplicate.
Triplicate, wow. Okay, so for a production survey license under Rule 4, what are they looking for?
Things like a detailed map of the area,
Right,
preliminary
yeah.
sketches of the powerhouse, dam, maybe initial transmission line ideas, right? Water resource details, estimated water use, estimated costs and timelines for the survey, and the full project.
So a real initial blueprint.
Exactly. And the planned generating capacity, annual output estimate. If it's not hydro, you need details on the fuel or energy source, how you'll get it. It forces early stage thinking.
Good approach. And for surveying transmission line routes, Rule 5.
Similar logic. A preliminary map showing the main route, maybe alternatives, justification, why is this line needed, its purpose, length, voltage standard, capacity, expected load, types of consumers.
And cost and timeline estimates, again.
Always. Cost and timeline for survey, cost and timeline for construction. It's all about defining the scope, proving feasibility for moving power.
Okay. And Rule 6, surveying for distribution networks, getting power to the end user.
Right. Need a map of the proposed service area showing boundaries, any existing infrastructure, your initial system design ideas. Why is it needed? Estimate the number and type of consumers.
Where will the power come from?
Exactly. Points of purchase or acquisition, details on selling and distributing it, and yes, cost and timeline estimates again. It's about showing how you'll connect and serve customers reliably.
Very structured. So applications go and what happens next? Examination.
Rule 7 covers that. The secretary or the department checks if everything required by the Act and rules is actually there. If not, they notify the applicant within 15 days, giving them time to provide the missing bits.
And that affects the official submission date.
Yes, if the department has to ask for more info, the date they receive that missing info becomes the official application date. Keeps it fair.
Okay, fair process. If everything's good to go.
Then Rule 8 says the secretary issues the survey license. They might add conditions or amendments. It'll be in a standard format from the schedules 5A, BD, depending on the type.
And Rule 9 allows issuing multiple survey licenses at once.
Yeah, interestingly, if someone applies for a big integrated project and provides all the info for production, transmission, and distribution surveys up front, they can get all 3 survey licenses simultaneously. Could speed things up.
Streamlining for big projects. Makes sense once the survey work is done.
Rule 10. Submit a survey report in triplicate, again, to the department within 30 days of finishing. And Rule 11 prevents issuing a second survey license for the same work while the first is still valid, avoids duplication.
Sensible. Okay, now the big step, getting the full licenses. Production, transmission, distribution. Rule 12 for production sounds intense.
It really is. Very extensive requirements, detailed project description maps, costs, timelines, ownership structure if it uses fuel, details on type, supply, storage agreements.
And a feasibility analysis.
Absolutely crucial. Technical feasibility, economic viability, description of potential customers. Plus, financing details, stability of investors, commitments, share capital, debt, land acquisition info public, private land needed temporarily and permanently, and critically, an environmental impact assessment, an EIA.
The EIA is vital. What does Rule 12 say it must cover?
Measures to minimize negative environmental, social, economic effects, impact on the local area, use of local labor and resources, benefits for locals post-project, any training plans, site facilities, safety arrangements, impact on landowners.
Wow.
And if people need relocating, a detailed rehabilitation plan. It's a very thorough look at the potential consequences and mitigation.
Very comprehensive, very responsible. What else for a production license?
How the power will be sold, any power purchase agreements or letters of intent, details of the project's own transmission lines, fuel supply, transport, storage details if applicable. Basically anything else relevant. They want the full picture.
No stone unturned, it seems. Rule 13 for transmission licenses must be similarly detailed, focusing on the lines themselves.
Indeed. Project description, ownership, timeline. A route map is key, exact path, substations, width of right-of-way, single line electrical diagram. Technical specs are front and center, voltage standard, capacity, construction standards, wire size, spacing, pole types, insulators, detailed construction map.
The technical nuts and bolts. What about the wider context?
Feasibility analysis, again, technical and economic. If supplying consumers directly from the line, need details. Use of any existing systems, financing, land acquisition, and another comprehensive EIA.
And the EIA for transmission lines would focus more on the route, I guess.
Exactly. Environmental, social, economic effects along the path. Land use, displacement, local benefits. Need any power purchase agreement, and a map showing other electrical infrastructure within 1.5 kilometers. Understanding the impact on the corridor.
Understanding the corridor impact. Okay, finally, Rule 14, distribution licenses, bringing power to homes and businesses.
Here the focus shifts right to the end consumers. Project description, where the power is coming from, cost timeline for the network, ownership, feasibility analysis technical, economic, estimate of total electricity sales, use of existing systems, financing info, and a detailed map of the distribution area.
That map sounds critical for distribution.
It is. Rule 14 says it must show boundaries, existing infrastructure, plans for new lines, standard distribution voltage, construction standards, estimated number and types of consumers, and full details on where they'll buy the electricity they distribute, including agreements. It's about proving they can reach and serve customers.
Proving they can deliver. So these big applications go in. Is the examination process, Rule 15, different from the survey ones?
Similar process, but a bit longer. 45 days notice if information is missing instead of 15 for survey licenses, which makes sense given the complexity.
Right, more detail to check.
And again, the date they receive any missing info becomes the official submission date.
Okay. After this check, does the public get a say?
Yes, Rule 16 is really important here. Public notice. Once an application passes the initial check, the department publishes the project details for everyone to see.
And people can react.
Absolutely. Anyone who thinks they'll be negatively affected has 35 days to submit their concerns with reasons to the department. It's a formal way to get local feedback.
That's crucial. How much weight does that public feedback carry?
Rule 16.3 says the department must consider any adverse reactions received, and any conditions they think are needed to address those concerns will be added to the license. It builds in accountability to local impacts.
A strong mechanism for incorporating local concerns. So after all that, the full license is issued, Rule 17.
Exactly. After the examination and public notice phase, the Secretary issues the license production, transmission, or distribution. Could be as applied for or with amendments or conditions. Uses standard formats from Schedules 9A, B, or C.
And Rule 18, like with survey licenses, allows combined licenses.
Yes. Production, transmission, and distribution licenses can be issued simultaneously for a single interconnected project if all the info is submitted together. Again, efficiency for big, well-planned projects.
Makes sense. What about those who already hold a survey license? Is it easier for them to get the full license? Rule 19?
Yes, there's a smoother path. If you have a valid survey license and apply for the full license based on your survey findings within its validity period, you will be issued the full license, assuming you meet all the other requirements. It encourages doing the survey work properly.
A good incentive. Okay, someone gets a production license. Rule 20 talks about their rights to use water.
Yes, they get the right to use water resources, but strictly limited to the location and quantities specified in their license. Controls water usage, aligns it with the approved plan. Very important for resource management.
Crucial. And timelines. Once you have a license, do you have to start work quickly? Rule 21.
Yes. 3 months to start physical work for a survey license, 1 year for production, transmission, or distribution licenses. You have to notify the department when you start.
Can you get extensions?
Yes, if you have valid reasons. And once work starts, you need to submit progress reports every 6 months until completion. Keeps projects moving.
Accountability. What about operations that existed before this 1993 Act? Rule 22.
They had to apply for new licenses under these rules, providing all the same detailed information. It was about bringing everyone under the same regulatory umbrella. Essential for consistency.
Bringing everyone into the new system. Now, importing electricity, Rule 23, how is that handled?
If a licensee wants to import power, they need prior approval from the government of Nepal. They apply to the department with details. Source country, voltage, quantity, where it will be used, the time period, any agreements. The government reviews and can grant permission, maybe with conditions. Imports are regulated too.
Regulated imports. Okay, the money side. Fees for licenses. Rule 24.
Yep. For survey licenses, you deposit a fee amount in Schedule 11 with the application. If you get the license, that deposit becomes the fee and goes to government revenue. If not, you might get a refund. For full licenses, the fee, also in Schedule 11, is paid at the time of application.
And renewal. Licenses don't last forever, right? Rule 25.
Correct. They need renewal 1 year before expiry. There's a renewal fee, too, again specified in Schedule 11, ensures ongoing compliance.
Ongoing checks. For royalties, especially hydro, how are the units calculated? Rule 26.
They deduct the electricity used within the powerhouse itself for lighting, equipment, etc., from the total generation. The royalty is paid on the remaining net amount. Seems fair, right?
Okay.
Based on what's actually sold or sent out.
Yes, it seems fair. And exporting power. Taxes. Rule 27.
The amount of export tax is determined by the specific agreement made between the producer and the government of Nepal. So it's negotiated case by case. Allows flexibility.
Negotiated export taxes. Okay, Chapter 3 changes tack focusing on distributors and consumers. This is where it hits home for most people.
Absolutely. Rule 28 covers getting connected. Consumers apply to the local licensee using their form. The licensee must inspect the consumer's internal wiring first.
For safety.
Exactly. If it meets standards, they connect the supply. If not, they issue a notice listing the needed improvements. Safety first.
What if there's a dispute about the wiring or connection?
Rule 28.3 has a fix. Either party can apply to the chief electricity inspector, who investigates and makes a final binding decision. Before connection, the licensee also consults the consumer on the service line route and meter location, provides a cost estimate, and connection only happens after payment. Transparent process.
Clear steps, dispute resolution. Good. Rule 29 is all about the energy meters themselves.
Yes, the licensee is responsible for installing the meter at their own expense to measure consumption accurately. They can take a reasonable security deposit for it, refundable if the connection ends, unless it already existed.
Can you get power without a meter?
Rule 29.3 mentions it might happen in special cases or by mutual agreement, but it seems unlikely to be common. Accurate measurement is the goal.
Makes sense. What about meter accuracy and maintenance? We all worry about being overcharged.
The licensee has to periodically inspect meters, replace faulty ones free of charge, unless the consumer damaged it through negligence. If a consumer complains their meter is faulty or fast, the licensee must inspect within 15 days.
And if it is faulty?
They repair or replace it free. And importantly, if you were overcharged, they have to compensate you for the excess paid, going back 1 month before your complaint. That's strong consumer protection.
That is good protection. What else do licensees have to do for customers under Rule 29?
Provide a consumer card showing monthly usage and payments. They can seal the meter to prevent tampering. Consumers mustn't break seals or damage equipment.
Can you ask to move your meter?
Yes, the licensee can do it, but they can charge for that service. Details in Rule 34. Consumers also can't mess with the service line, meter, or cutouts. It's about system integrity.
Sensible rules. Rule 30, licensee record keeping.
They must keep accurate, up-to-date records of supply to each consumer available for the inspector. Also need current lists of consumers served and prospective ones, essential for management and oversight.
And you can't just share your connection, right? Rule 31?
Nope, strictly forbidden. Each property needs its own authorized metered connection, prevents bypassing the system.
What about streetlights? Public lighting, Rule 32.
Expenses for charges, repair, maintenance are governed by the agreement made between the consumer, like a municipality, and the licensee when the lights are installed. It's contractual.
Contractual agreement. Okay. Rule 33, paying the bill.
Consumers pay charges set by the Tariff Fixation Commission, that's the body set up by the Act. The licensee sets payment periods, can offer rebates for timely payment, and adds surcharges for late payment. Standard stuff to encourage payment.
Structured tariffs and payment terms. Any other charges licensees can make. Rule 34.
Yes, a specific list. Initial line installation, moving a meter, reconnection after disconnection, replacing a fuse in the meter box, fitting a new seal, transferring account ownership, testing a meter on request, unless it's found faulty, then free, issuing consumer cards, specific services, specific charges.
A clear service menu. Rule 35 brings back metering, but for big producers.
Right. Anyone producing over 1,000 kilowatt must install and maintain energy meters, essential for tracking grid input.
Accountability at the source. Rule 36 is about technical design of circuits.
Yes, designing lines from generation substation to the final distribution transformer must ensure proper voltage transformation and minimize losses. Using transformer tap settings to optimize voltage is mentioned. It's about efficiency, minimizing waste.
Efficiency and voltage quality. What about safety within the consumer's property? Rule 37.
Consumers have a duty to report any dangerous electrical situation they notice on their property to the licensee.
And the licensee must act. Rule 38.
Immediately. Assign a technician to investigate and fix the danger. Licensees also have a proactive duty to periodically inspect and maintain consumer service lines and ensure safety measures are in place, even without a specific report. Proactive safety is key.
Proactive maintenance is vital. Lastly, in this chapter, Rule 39, reconnection.
Simple. If your service was cut off, usually for non-payment, it gets reconnected once you pay the outstanding dues. Straightforward restoration.
Straightforward. Okay, moving to Chapter 4, technical specs. Voltage, frequency, power factor, setting the electrical standard.
Yes, the baseline everyone must meet for reliable supply. Rule 40 sets standard consumer voltages, 230V single-phase, typical homes, 400V three-phase, industry commercial. 4-wire is 230-400V.
Is there any leeway? Fluctuation?
Yes. Plus or minus 5% variation is allowed from these standards. Acknowledges minor system variation.
Okay. Rule 41 covers high voltage distribution systems.
Right. These run from 3.3 kV up to 33 kV. Same fluctuation allowed, plus or minus 5%.
And Rule 42, high voltage transmission systems, long distance stuff.
Much higher voltages here. 33 kV up to 400 kV. Because it's harder to maintain voltage over long distances, a slightly wider fluctuation is permitted, plus or minus 10%. Higher voltage pushes power further, like water pressure.
Makes sense. What about frequency? The 50 hertz standard, Rule 43.
Standard frequency is indeed 50 hertz, and the allowed fluctuation is very tight, plus or minus only 2.5%. Stable frequency is critical for lots of equipment.
Critical. Then power factor, Rule 44. That can seem a bit abstract.
The rule says it should be between 0.8 lagging and 1.0 leading. Licensees must use equipment like condensers to manage reactive power and maintain this.
Why is it important?
Think of it like efficiency. A low power factor means energy is being wasted in the system. If a consumer's usage has a poor power factor, the licensee can require them to install correction equipment, condensers.
Ensuring efficient power use. Rule 45 just lists standard units.
Pretty much amps, volts, ohms, watts, kilowatt hours, offering from the bill.
Ugh.
VARs. It's the standard language for electrical measurements, essential for consistency.
Standard language. Rule 46 brings it back to the licensee's duty.
Yes, they must maintain these standards for voltage, frequency, power factor. If an inspector finds they're not meeting them, the inspector considers the system's condition and can give them time to fix it. The licensee then has to make the improvements. Enforcement.
Monitoring and enforcement. And Rule 47 allows adjustments to these limits.
Yes, the government can change the limits via notification in the Nepal Gazette, but only based on technical factors to avoid dangers. Allows adaptation over time.
Flexibility based on technical need. Okay, Chapter 5, absolutely critical. Safety measures regarding electric devices. Preventing accidents.
Huge focus here. Rule 48 specifies minimum ground clearances for wires, how high they must be. Detailed in Schedule 12 for different voltages, crossing roads, alongside roads, other places.
Higher voltages need more clearance.
Yes, an extra 0.305 meters for every 33 kV above the 33 kV threshold. Vital to prevent contact, especially by vehicles.
Vital. Rule 49 targets lines crossing roads in busy areas.
Yes. If it's over 11 kV in a densely populated area crossing a road, a double insulator system is mandatory. Extra safety layer where consequences are high.
Sensible precaution. Rule 50 looks at horizontal distance lines to houses or trees.
Schedule 13 specifies minimum horizontal gaps. Again, extra distance needed for lines over 33 kV, 0.305 meters per 33 kV. Prevents fires or contact during storms or high winds.
Preventing contact with buildings and trees, Rule 51 connects pole spacing to safety.
Exactly. When deciding how far apart poles should be, you have to consider the wire's tensile strength, a safety factor for stress, and the required ground clearance. Prevents sagging or pole collapse. Holistic structural safety.
Holistic approach. Rule 52 is quite strict about lines over houses.
Generally prohibits running lines directly over a house roof, exception for low voltage, up to 400 230 or dV, over garages, temporary shelters, fences, if it's at least 3 meters above the highest point. A practical concession, but still with a safety margin.
Practical exception. Rule 53. Different voltages on the same pole.
Higher voltage lines must be placed above lower voltage lines. Must prevent leakage or hazards between them. Maintain required vertical separation. Key safety measure.
Vertical separation is key. Rules 54 and 55 are about coordination with other infrastructure, airports and telecom.
Yes. Rule 54. Installing lines near airports needs consultation and agreement with airport authorities. Critical for aviation safety. Rule 55. Similar coordination needed with telecom offices when lines are near telephone lines, or vice versa, to avoid physical obstruction or technical interference. Essential coordination.
Essential coordination. Rule 56. Lightning protection. Very relevant in Nepal.
Absolutely. Licensees must install effective lightning protection and proper earthing systems to safely dissipate the energy. Protects equipment, prevents fires. Vital.
Vital protection. Rule 57 covers standby generators, changeover switches.
Anyone installing a backup generator must install a proper changeover switch in consultation with the licensee. Crucial to prevent the generator and the grid being connected simultaneously. That could backfeed power dangerously.
Very important safety point. Rules 58, 59, 60 get into specific earthing and protection details.
Yes. Rule 58. Metallic supports in high voltage systems need permanent earthing. Insulators needed on stay wires above 3 meters height. Rule 59. Sealed cutouts breakers on meters for safety load limiting. Consumers need an isolating switch nearby. Rule 60. Specific earthing for appliances like water heaters, air conditioners, separate circuits, proper earthing, 3-pin plugs mandatory if different metals are used. Emphasizes technically sound earthing everywhere.
Comprehensive earthing and circuit protection are fundamental. Rule 61 touches on internal wiring safety.
Just as internal wiring methods and safety devices must meet prevailing technical standards at the time, puts responsibility on the installer homeowner.
Installer responsibility. Rule 62 specifies wire type for connections.
Must use insulated wire for connections to consumer premises. Basic protection. Rule 63 generally requires pole-mounted connections, though exceptions possible if safety assured by other means. Keeps wires elevated.
Elevated wiring preferred. Rule 64 and 65 set insulation resistance minimums, preventing leakage.
Yes. Minimum 5 megaohms for 230/400 V systems. For higher voltages, starting at 3.3 kV, it's 20 megaohms plus 1 megaohm for every 1 kV over 3.3 kV. Operation is prohibited if resistance drops below these levels. Think of it as a leak-proofness of the wiring. Crucial to prevent shocks and fires.
Crucial leak-proofness. Rule 66 allows the government to restrict land use near projects.
Yes, via Nepal Gazette notification, they can prohibit use of land houses near construction sites or within safety distances if it interferes or poses a risk. Also explicitly forbids planting trees or building under near lines within the distances in Schedules 12 and 13, ensures long-term safety and clearance.
Ensuring long-term clearance. Lastly, for safety devices, Rule 67 sets standards for all equipment.
Comprehensive rule. Use high-quality standard materials. Test new repaired equipment before operation. Wires must have adequate capacity. Joints must be technically sound. Underground metallic joint boxes accessible. Fuses breakers must be effective, safe, not pose risks themselves. And crucially, no single-pole switches on neutral wires, only on live phase wires. Ensures safety and reliability of all components.
Huge range of safety covered there. Okay, Chapter 6 continues the safety theme, but focusing on safety provisions relating to the electrical works, people doing the work.
Exactly. Worker safety. Rule 68 mandates warning signs, Nepali and English, on motors, generators, transformers, control gear, poles over 400 V, X-ray equipment, high-frequency plants. If you can't hang them directly, put them nearby or at the entrance. Clear warnings are vital.
Vital warnings. Rule 69, cutting power for work. The basic principle.
General rule. Supply must be cut off for inspection, repair, important work. Exception if work can be done safely live, but extreme caution needed, and extreme care when re-energizing afterwards. Safety is paramount, even over minimizing disruption.
Safety first. Rules 70 and 71 detail specific safe work practices.
Yes. Rule 70. Before starting work on a line, test for voltage to confirm it's dead and earth the line as an extra precaution. Rule 71. Workers must use insulated gloves when risk of contact with live lines exists. Fundamental protocols against electric shock.
Fundamental protocols. Rule 72 emphasizes first aid readiness.
Licensees must display clear first aid procedures in Nepali at plants for electrical incidents, and relevant employees must receive compulsory first aid training. Being prepared saves lives.
Preparation is key. Rule 73 mandates safety gear for working at heights.
Workers at elevated places or on poles must use safety belt harnesses to prevent falls. Basic but essential, personal protective equipment, PPE.
Essential PPE. Finally, for safe work, Rule 74, accident reporting.
Licensees must report any accident damage at their plant to the inspector using the format in Schedule 14. The inspector can investigate the cause and order specific safety measures to prevent recurrence. The licensee must comply. This feedback loop improves safety across the industry.
Learning from incidents to improve safety. Okay, Chapter 7 moves to inspection and investigation, ensuring rules are followed.
This sets up the oversight function. Rule 75. Government can appoint chief electricity inspectors and other inspectors, plus support staff. Rule 76 specifies qualifications. Chief inspector needs 10 years experience post-BA in Gladden. Inspector needs a BA degree. Ensures technical competence.
Qualified inspectors, what powers do they have? Rule 77.
Authority to enter and examine licensee plant's equipment. Licensees and consumers have a duty to answer questions truthfully and cooperate fully. Ensures inspectors get the info they need.
Power to investigate. Rule 78 allows inspection of new plants.
Yes, the chief inspector, or their designees, can examine new plants before they start operating. Proactive check to ensure standards are met from day one.
Proactive checks. And Rule 79 mandates regular checks on operating plants.
Correct. Annual examination required for all operating plants, followed by an official certificate of compliance from the inspector. Ensures ongoing adherence to standards.
Ongoing adherence. Rule 80 says people must follow inspector orders.
Yes, licensees must comply with inspector orders related to any aspect of electricity operations. There's an appeal process, though. If unhappy with an order, they can complain to the secretary, whose decision is final. Clear authority plus an appeal route.
Authority and appeals. Rule 81, getting permission to reoperate something previously deemed unsafe.
If an inspector ordered fixes, the licensee must apply to the same inspector for permission to restart after making corrections. The inspector re-examines and, if satisfied, grants written permission. Verifies fixes are done properly.
Verification before restart. Rule 82 allows licensees or consumers to request inspections.
Yes, they can apply to the chief inspector for an examination if they feel it's needed. But for these requested inspections, not the routine annual ones, the requester pays a prescribed charge, allows specific concerns to be addressed.
Mechanism for specific concerns. Lastly, for inspections, Rule 83, communicating findings.
Inspectors must notify all parties of the examination outcome, proper, safe, or not. If improper, they issue a written order detailing required changes, repairs, or even ordering a halt to operations if necessary for safety. Clear communication and binding orders are key to enforcement.
Clear communication, binding orders. Okay, we're into the home stretch. Chapter 8, miscellaneous provisions, tying up loose ends.
Exactly. Rule 84 allows the government to set specific safety conditions for hydro construction, dams, powerhouses, via Gazette notification, acknowledging the unique challenges of big hydro.
Specific rules for big hydro. Rule 85 focuses on transparency from licensees.
Yes, before starting work, licensees must prominently display copies of their license, service area maps, consumer relations info, and other license conditions in their main office. Easy access to key info for stakeholders.
Good practice. Rule 86 deals with worker welfare, housing, and bonuses.
Licensees must provide residential quarters for workers involved in operations. They also have to set aside 2% of net profit for an annual employee bonus, though an individual's bonus can't exceed their annual salary. Any leftover amount goes into an employee welfare fund managed by the licensee. Other bonus aspects follow general Nepali labor law, aims for worker well-being.
Provisions for worker well-being. Rules 87 and 88 tackle compensation for landowners affected by projects.
Yes. Rule 87 says government or licensee provides fair compensation if land house use is restricted within prescribed distances due to projects, as per Rule 66. Rule 88 sets up a compensation fixation committee to determine the amount.
Who is on this committee?
It's multi-stakeholder.
Yeah.
Government reps, licensee rep, electricity experts, affected landowners, local land revenue and development authorities. Designed to objectively assess the financial loss, but compensation isn't usually paid if the line just serves the landowner, or in dense areas with house-to-house wall connections, aims for fair process.
Multi-stakeholder approach for fairness. Rule 89 is just administrative, designating the secretary.
Yes, clarifies who holds authority for specific functions mentioned in certain sections of the main act. Clear lines of responsibility. Rules 90 and 91 are about ongoing reporting, vital for oversight.
Crucial for oversight and planning.
Indeed. Rule 90. Licensees submit audited annual income expenditure accounts to the department within 6 months of the financial year end. Shows financial health. Rule 91. Annual operational reports needed too, detailing monthly generation, distribution by consumer type, internal use, leakage losses, load capacity factors, peak demand, even a sample daily load curve. Vital data for monitoring and planning.
Vital data for the department. Rule 92 allows licensees to use the national grid.
Yes. Promotes efficient use of infrastructure. Licensees can use the national grid if technically feasible. Grid owners must permit use on reasonable terms and mutually agreed charges. Encourages connectivity, builds a unified network.
Grid connectivity for resilience. Rule 93 links these rules to other laws.
Right. Licensees must also be registered under the Industrial Enterprises Act, and if foreign investment is involved, they need permission under the Foreign Investment and Technology Transfer Act. Ensures alignment with Nepal's broader legal framework.
Operating within the wider framework. Rule 94 clarifies applicability to government projects and small projects.
Yes. All rules except the specific licensing process apply to government-developed electricity under Section 34 of the Act, and also apply, except licensing, to projects up to 1,000 kilowatt. Ensures broad application of safety and operational standards.
Broad application of standards. Rule 94 allows the ministry to create procedural manuals. Added later.
Seems so. Gives the ministry authority to develop detailed manuals for implementing the Act and rules. Provides flexibility for more specific guidance without amending the main rules.
Flexibility for detailed procedures. Rule 95 allows government to amend the schedules.
Correct. Changes to schedules, fees, formats, distances can be done by notification in the Nepal Gazette. More efficient for technical updates.
Efficient updates. And Rule 96, the final one, repeals previous rules.
Formally repeals the old electricity rules from 2025 BS, but includes a saving clause. Actions taken under the old rules remain valid. Notes the name changes of the department and ministry, and reminds us about Schedules 114, which contain all the crucial formats, fees, and safety distance tables we've been talking about. They're integral to applying the rules.
Those schedules are key to making it all work in practice. Wow. That was an incredibly thorough journey through Nepal's electricity rules from 1993. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us.
My pleasure. It really paints a picture, doesn't it? A very comprehensive, highly structured approach to managing electricity development and safety, from the license application right down to consumer rights.
I was really struck by the sheer detail in those license applications,
Right.
And the fact that public feedback is formally built into the process. Plus, there's very specific safety distances and technical standards. It just highlights how critical careful planning and regulation are for something as vital and potentially dangerous as electricity.
Absolutely. Understanding these foundational rules gives you real context, whether you're involved in the sector in Nepal or just interested in infrastructure, energy policy, or how essential services are managed anywhere.
And it definitely makes you think, these rules started in 1993. How do they need to adapt for today's world? With renewables booming, smart grids emerging, changing consumer expectations, what challenges and opportunities do future updates need to tackle?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It shows that regulations in such a dynamic field can never really stand still. They need constant review to stay effective with technological and environmental shifts.
Definitely food for thought. Well, if your curiosity has been piqued, we absolutely encourage you to look at the source material itself if you get the chance. It's a really detailed insight into managing a nation's power. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.